The chrome on the gas pump handle was cool against his knuckles, a stark contrast to the oppressive 94-degree heat shimmering off the asphalt of the Texaco station lot in Barstow. At 6'5" and 310 pounds, Frank Goliath Koslek was a mountain of a man, his shadow a welcome eclipse on the blistering concrete. His leather cut, emblazoned with the winged death's head of the Hells Angels, was heavy even in this heat, a second skin worn for 27 years. The rumble of his panhead chopper, cooling with a series of metallic ticks and pings, was the only sound he cared for. Then, a new sound. Small, hesitant, a sound that didn't belong in his world of roaring engines and barroom brawls. Daddy's friend took Sissy for ice cream 3 days ago. Goliath didn't turn at first. He thought it was the heat playing tricks on him, a phantom whisper from a life he'd long since buried. He squeezed the pump handle, watching the numbers on the display climb. 8.42 gallons, $41.17. The specifics mattered. But the voice came again, closer this time, laced with a tremor that vibrated deeper than his bike's idle. "Mister? My Sissy is gone." He stopped the pump. He replaced the nozzle with a deliberate, slow movement, the thud of it seating in the cradle unnaturally loud. He turned. There, standing just at the edge of his formidable shadow, was a boy. The boy couldn't have been more than 5 years old. He was maybe 42 pounds soaking wet, swimming in a pair of faded blue pajamas decorated with cartoon dinosaurs. His feet were bare, save for a single lonely sock on his left foot, also blue, also adorned with a T-Rex. His blonde hair was a matted mess, and there were faint, dirty tracks on his cheeks where tears had dried. But his eyes, a startlingly clear blue, were fixed on the patch on Goliath's vest. Not with fear, with something that looked terrifyingly like hope. Goliath's face was a roadmap of hard living. A scar bisected his left eyebrow, a souvenir from a misunderstanding in a Reno saloon. His nose had been broken 3 times. His beard was more salt than pepper, braided into 2 thick plaits, tied off with silver rings. He was not a man children approached. He was a man mothers pulled their children away from. Yet here this one stood, unafraid, desperate. He crouched, his knees protesting with a series of loud cracks. The movement was slow, careful, like a man disarming a bomb. He folded his enormous frame down until he was almost at eye level with the child. The world shrank to the space between them. The smell of gasoline and hot asphalt, the distant drone of the I-15. "What did you say, little man?" His voice was gravel, a low rumble that could shake dust from rafters. The boy flinched, but he didn't run. He swallowed hard, his small Adam's apple bobbing. "Daddy's friend," he repeated, his voice clearer now, practiced. "He took Sissy for ice cream. 3 days ago. Her name is Lily. 3 days." The words landed like stones in Goliath's gut. Not 3 hours. 3 days, an eternity in the life of a child, an eternity for a little girl who went for ice cream and never came back. "Where are your folks?" Goliath asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. "Sleeping. They sleep a lot." The boy's gaze dropped to the ground, to his one sock. Mommy cried, then Daddy yelled, then they got the sleepy juice. The sleepy juice. Goliath knew what that meant. He'd seen it 1,000 times. The casual, devastating language of a child raised in the wreckage of addiction. He felt a cold fury begin to smolder deep in his chest, a familiar fire he'd learned to bank over the years. But this time, it felt different. This time, it felt holy. "Did you tell a policeman?" The boy nodded, a single jerky motion. "He came yesterday. He was big. He smelled like my coffee. He said Lily probably just went with a friend. He said Mommy had to call when she woke up. He didn't believe me. The boy's eyes welled up again, fresh tears tracing the paths of the old ones. But you have a scary face. I think you'll believe me. The brutal, innocent logic of it struck Goliath with the force of a physical blow. A scary face, a lifetime of being judged, feared, and dismissed, and this tiny, broken human had seen it not as a threat, but as a credential, a qualification for a task no one else would take, a flash, not a memory, but a premonition, a glimpse into a future just hours away. The sound of 196 Harley-Davidson engines, a synchronized roar tearing through the pre-dawn darkness of the Mojave. Not the chaotic noise of a weekend run, but the disciplined, percussive thunder of an army on the move, headlights cutting through the gloom, a river of chrome and steel flowing down a 2-lane blacktop with a singular, terrible purpose. At the head of this legion, Goliath feels the vibration not in his hands on the grips, but in his very bones. The wind whips at his beard, but it cannot scour the image of the boy's face from his mind. It cannot silence the echo of his promise. This wasn't a ride. It was a reckoning. The sound they made was not just noise. It was a sworn oath taking physical form. A promise made to a 5-year-old with one sock, now being honored by 200 of the most feared men on the planet. They were coming. And heaven help the man they were coming for. Back at the gas station, the vision faded, leaving Goliath with the shimmering heat and the small, waiting child. He looked at the boy's face, at the raw, unfiltered trust in his eyes. In that moment, Frank Goliath Koslek made a choice. Or perhaps the choice was made for him, forged in a part of his soul he thought had died long ago. He reached out, his hand, calloused and scarred, as big as the boy's entire chest. He didn't touch him. He just opened his palm. "What's your name, kid?" "Leo." "All right, Leo, I believe you." He said the words, and the world shifted on its axis. He felt the weight of them settle onto his broad shoulders, heavier than his cut, heavier than his past. "I'm Frank, and I'm going to find your Sissy. I promise." He stood up, his full height blocking out the sun. He took Leo's small hand in his. The boy's fingers were tiny, fragile. Goliath's grip was so gentle, he was barely touching him. "First things first," he rumbled. "A man can't go on a mission on an empty stomach." He led the boy into the convenience store, a giant and a pixie navigating the aisles of chips and soda. He bought 2 hot dogs, a bag of potato chips, and 2 chocolate milks. The cashier, a teenager with pimples and a bored expression, didn't meet his eyes. She just took the $20 bill and gave him the change. Outside, they sat on the curb, the concrete still warm from the afternoon sun. Leo devoured his hot dog in 4 bites. Goliath ate his slowly, watching. "Tell me about Sissy," he said between bites. "Tell me everything." "She's 7, Leo said, his mouth full of chocolate milk. "She has hair like sunshine. And she's missing her front tooth. Right here." He pointed to the gap in his own smile. "She gave me her rock before she left." "A rock?" Leo reached into the pocket of his pajama pants and pulled out a small, perfectly smooth gray stone. It was an ordinary river rock, but he held it like it was a diamond. She said, "It's a wishing rock. I've been wishing for her to come home." Goliath looked at the rock, then at the boy. He felt that cold fire in his chest flare. He pulled out his phone, a beat-up smartphone with a cracked screen. He scrolled through his contacts, past names like Ripper, Scab, and Wrench, until he found the one he needed. Preacher. He pressed the call button. The first stop was the Barstow Police Department. The building was a sterile beige box that smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. Goliath held Leo's hand as they walked in, his biker boots loud on the polished linoleum floor. Every head turned. The whispers started immediately. A secretary behind a plexiglass shield looked up, her eyes wide with alarm. Goliath ignored them all. He walked directly to the front desk. "I need to speak with the officer who responded to a call at 412 Juniper Street yesterday." His voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire lobby, silencing the chatter. The secretary, a woman named Carol with a nameplate and 20 years of tired resignation in her eyes, stammered, "Sir, do you have an appointment? A 5-year-old boy has a missing sister. That's my appointment." The exchange brought a man out from a back office. He was in his late 30s, with a soft paunch straining the buttons of his uniform shirt and a name tag that read, "Officer Miller." A faint sheen of sweat was on his brow. He recognized Leo instantly, and a flash of annoyance crossed his face before being replaced by a mask of professional boredom. "I handled that call," he said, his tone dismissive. He didn't look at Goliath. He looked at Leo. "I told you, son. Your mom needs to make the official report. We can't do anything until then. It's procedure." Goliath stepped forward, placing his hand flat on the high counter. The gesture was not aggressive, yet it seemed to suck the air out of the room. He leaned in slightly. "Her name is Lily. She is 7 years old. She has been missing for 72 hours. Her parents are incapacitated. This boy is her only advocate. And now, so am I. What exactly did you do when you responded to the call?" Officer Miller bristled, his authority challenged. "I conducted a preliminary investigation. I spoke with the mother, who was uncooperative. There were no signs of forced entry. In these situations, 9 times out of 10, the child is with a relative or a friend's family. It's a domestic squabble, not a kidnapping." He said the word kidnapping with a kind of sarcastic pity, as if Goliath were a hysterical parent overreacting. "Did you file an Amber Alert?" Goliath's voice was dangerously soft. Miller scoffed. "An Amber Alert? Sir, there are criteria. We need a confirmed abduction, a vehicle description, a license plate. We can't just send the whole state into a panic because a drunk mother can't find her kid." "A neighbor saw the car," Goliath said, his eyes boring into Miller's. "A woman named Mrs. Gable. She said it was a light blue sedan, maybe a Toyota, with a dent in the rear passenger door. She said she told you that." Miller's face tightened. He shifted his weight. The witness was elderly. Unreliable. She couldn't give me a plate number, not even a model year. It's not actionable intelligence. He glanced at the clock on the wall, eager for this confrontation to be over. "Look, I filed a report. When the mother sobers up and calls us, we'll escalate it. Until then, my hands are tied." He turned to walk away, a clear dismissal. Goliath didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "You filed a report?" he said to Miller's retreating back. "What did it say?" Miller stopped. He turned back, his irritation now plain. He grabbed a thin file from a stack on his desk. He read from it in a flat monotone. "Case number 774-B. Attended 412 Juniper Street RE. Possible missing child. Child, Lily Anderson, 7. Likely with non-custodial acquaintance. Mother, Brenda Anderson, 32. Intoxicated, uncooperative. Father, Mark Anderson, 35. Also present, intoxicated. Advised mother to file official missing persons report upon achieving sobriety. Concluded no immediate danger. Case closed pending new information." He slapped the file back down on the desk. "Satisfied?" Goliath stared at him. For exactly 5 seconds, he said nothing. He just let the words hang in the air. Concluded no immediate danger. Case closed. Leo, standing beside him, began to tremble, the officer's cold recitation confirming his worst fear. No one was coming. No one cared. Goliath squeezed the boy's hand gently. Then he looked at Miller, and for the first time, a flicker of the cold fire in his chest showed in his eyes. "No," he said, his voice a low promise. "I'm not." His next stop was the Department of Child and Family Services, a cramped office 2 blocks away. The air inside was thick with the smell of despair and cheap air freshener. They waited for 45 minutes before a caseworker named Janice could see them. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes shadowed by perpetual exhaustion. Her desk was a mountain range of files, each one a story of a broken family. She listened patiently as Goliath explained the situation, her expression a mixture of sympathy and helplessness. "Mr. Kozlek," she said, her voice gentle, "I wish I could do more. I really do. But without a direct referral from law enforcement or a court order, my authority is extremely limited. We can't just remove children from a home based on what? A credible report of a missing child?" Goliath interrupted, his frustration simmering. "Based on the word of a 5-year-old and a concerned citizen," she finished delicately, gesturing vaguely at his leather cut. "The system has rules, protocols. If Officer Miller didn't see evidence of immediate danger—" "3 days isn't immediate?" Goliath asked, the question hanging between them. Janice looked down at her hands, at the chipped nail polish on her fingers. She looked at Leo, who was staring at the floor, tracing the patterns in the worn carpet with the toe of his single sock. In the eyes of the bureaucracy, Mr. Kozlek, no, it's not. Not without a body. Not without a ransom note. It's a tragedy waiting to be documented. Her honesty was more damning than Miller's indifference. She was a good person, trapped in a broken machine. Goliath stood up. He thanked her for her time. As they left, Janice called out to him, "Mr. Kozlek?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "The man who took the girl. Did the boy give you a name?" Goliath paused at the door. "Mr. Dave," he said. "That's all he knows. Daddy's friend." Janice wrote it down on a sticky note, a tiny act of defiance against the crushing weight of procedure. It wasn't much, but it was something. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The beautiful sunset felt like a mockery. Goliath led Leo back to his bike. The boy looked up at the massive, gleaming machine, then at Goliath's grim face. "Are they going to help?" Leo asked, his voice small. "No, little man, they're not." Goliath's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "So we are." He sat Leo down on the curb again, making sure he was safe. He walked a few feet away and pulled out his phone. He didn't need to look at the screen this time. He hit the first number on his speed dial. The phone rang twice before a calm, authoritative voice answered. "Preacher, it's Goliath. I have a situation. A lost lamb." Preacher's voice didn't change, but Goliath could hear the shift in tone, the immediate sharpening of focus. "Where?" "Barstow. A little girl, name of Lily, 7 years old, taken 3 days ago. The cops are calling it a family matter. The system is asleep at the wheel. Who has her?" "A man named Dave, a friend of the father. That's all we have." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Goliath could picture Preacher in his clubhouse, a former Baptist minister who'd found a different kind of flock. He would be stroking his long gray beard, his mind already working, calculating, planning. "A lamb belongs to its flock," Preacher said finally. "If the shepherds won't protect it, then the wolves will. And we are the wolves that hunt other wolves. How many do you need? All of them, Goliath said without hesitation. Consider it done. Word goes out in 5. We'll muster at the old cement plant off Route 66. ETA 2 hours. And Goliath? Yeah? Bring the boy. We need to hear it from him. Goliath hung up. He made 2 more calls. The first was to a man they called Socket, a wiry, twitchy genius with a laptop and a deep-seated distrust of all authority. Socket had once hacked the DMV for a $50 bet. Socket, it's Goliath. I'm sending you a name. Brenda and Mark Anderson, 412 Juniper Street, Barstow. Find everything. Friends, enemies, work history, social media, pizza delivery preferences. I don't care. I need a last name for a man named Dave, a friend of the family. Socket just grunted. Give me 30 minutes. The second call was to a woman. Not a member, but a friend. An ally. Mrs. Gable. He got her number from the White Pages app on his phone. An elderly woman answered, her voice frail. Mrs. Gable? My name is Frank Kozlek. I'm a friend of Leo and Lily's. There was a suspicious silence. I saw you, she said, with the little boy, at the police station. They didn't listen to you either, did they? No, ma'am, they did not. That's why I'm calling. The car you saw, the light blue sedan. Can you tell me about it again? I already told that policeman. She started, her voice full of weary frustration. I know, ma'am, but I'm not him. I'm listening. Please. He could hear her take a deep breath. It was a 2014, maybe 2015, Toyota Camry. A pale, washed-out blue, like an old pair of jeans. There was a dent, a big one, on the rear passenger side door, low down, near the wheel well. Looked like someone had backed into a pole. And there was a sticker in the back window, a little stick figure family. But the dad figure was all scratched off. I thought that was odd. Goliath wrote it all down in a small notebook he kept in his vest pocket. Every detail. The scratched off sticker. That was the kind of thing a cop like Miller would ignore. That was the kind of thing that could break a case wide open. Thank you, Mrs. Gable, he said, his voice thick with gratitude. You've been a great help. You just find that little girl, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. You bring that sweet child home. He hung up the phone and walked back to Leo. He knelt down again, the setting sun casting their long shadows across the parking lot. We're going for a ride, Leo, he said. I'm taking you to meet some friends of mine. They're going to help us find Lily. Leo looked from Goliath to the motorcycle. His eyes were wide. Can I ride on that? Goliath almost smiled. He lifted the boy as if he weighed nothing and settled him on the gas tank in front of him. He wrapped one massive arm around the boy's small frame, a living seatbelt of muscle and leather. Hold on tight, he rumbled, and with a kick of the starter, the panhead roared to life, a promise of thunder unleashed into the twilight. The old cement plant stood like a skeletal ruin against the darkening desert sky. Its silos were crumbling, its windows shattered, a monument to forgotten industry. But tonight, it was alive. The air vibrated with the low, synchronized rumble of nearly 200 motorcycles. They weren't parked haphazardly. They were arranged in neat rows, by chapter, by rank. San Bernardino, Oakland, Richmond, Arizona nomads. Men who were rivals on any other day were brothers tonight. They stood in small groups, their cuts identifying their allegiance, but their faces sharing a single, grim expression. There were 196 of them. Goliath counted. 196 souls who had dropped everything, jobs, families, parole officer check-ins, to answer the call. When Goliath rolled in, his engine a familiar growl amidst the chorus, a path cleared for him. He killed the engine, and the relative silence that followed was heavy, expectant. He lifted Leo off the tank and set him on the ground. The boy stared, his eyes wide with awe and a little bit of fear, at the sea of leather, chrome, and denim surrounding him. These were not the friendly faces from his picture books. These were hard men with hard eyes and scars that told stories he couldn't imagine. Preacher stepped forward. He was older than Goliath, his hair and beard a torrent of white. He wore his cut over a simple black shirt. He didn't have Goliath's size, but he possessed an aura of absolute authority. He didn't look at Goliath. He knelt down, just as Goliath had done, and looked Leo in the eye. "You must be Leo," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "My name is Jacob, but my friends call me Preacher. Frank tells me you've lost someone." Leo nodded, clutching the smooth gray rock in his hand. "My Sissy." Preacher held out his hand. "May I see your rock?" Leo hesitated for a moment, then placed the wishing rock into Preacher's palm. Preacher examined it, turning it over under the glare of the few working floodlights. "This is a good rock," he said seriously. "A strong one. But a wish needs hands and feet to make it come true. That's why we're here. We are the hands and feet." He gave the rock back to Leo. "Now, I need you to be very brave. I need you to tell all of my friends here what you told Frank. Can you do that?" Leo looked past Preacher at the 195 other men watching him. They were shadows, giants, figures from a nightmare. But then he looked at Goliath, who gave him a slow, encouraging nod. Leo took a deep breath. "Daddy's friend took Sissy for ice cream," he began, his small voice cutting through the desert night. "His name is Mr. Dave. It was 3 days ago. She has hair like sunshine, and she's missing her front tooth. Please, please find her." Silence. The kind of absolute silence you only find deep in the desert. No one moved. No one spoke. For a full minute, the only sound was the wind whistling through the broken windows of the plant. The weight of that little boy's plea settled over the crowd, a sacred burden willingly accepted. Then, Preacher stood up. He turned to face his men. "You all heard him?" His voice boomed, no longer gentle, but filled with the fire of an old-time revivalist. "The law has failed this child. The system has failed this child. His own blood has failed this child. We will not." He pointed to a man hunched over a laptop set up on an old oil drum. "Socket. Report." Socket stood up, his eyes blinking rapidly in the light. He held up a tablet. "Mark and Brenda Anderson. A long history of petty arrests, public intoxication, domestic disturbances, lost custody of their first child 7 years ago. Lily. They got her back after 18 months of court-mandated rehab. They've been relapsing for the last 6. Mark Anderson worked at Northwood Lumber for 2 years, fired in 2021. Reason for termination: inappropriate conduct. Specifically, an unhealthy interest in co-workers' family photos. A complaint was filed by another employee. It was never investigated by police. He tapped the screen. I cross-referenced employee records from that period with public social media profiles of the Andersons. Found a man named David Rask. He was a friend on Brenda's Facebook page until this morning. His profile was deleted at approximately 0800 hours. A murmur went through the crowd. This was it. The wolf had a name. Socket continued. David Rask, 46 years old. No criminal record. Not so much as a speeding ticket. Works as a long-haul trucker for a regional freight company. Lives alone. Neighbors describe him as quiet, pays his taxes, mows his lawn, the banality of evil. but I pulled his DMV records before he could scrub everything. He drives a 2014 Toyota Camry. The color is registered as sky blue. Goliath stepped forward. "There's a dent," he said, his voice a low growl. "Rear passenger side." And a stick figure family sticker in the back window with the dad scratched out. An old woman saw it, a woman the cops called unreliable. Socket's fingers flew across his keyboard. He pulled up Rask's vehicle registration photo. It was a standard, low-resolution profile shot of the car. He zoomed in on the rear window. It was blurry, but it was there, a faint outline of a sticker. He then ran a search through a database he shouldn't have had access to, a collection of traffic camera photos from across the state. He typed in the car's description. "This will take time," he said, "to sift through the data." "We don't have time," Preacher said. He unrolled a large map of Southern California and laid it across the hood of a rusty pickup truck. "This is where we go old school. Rask is a trucker. He knows the roads. He knows how to disappear. He's not going to be on the interstate. He's going to be on the back roads, the forgotten highways. He thinks he's a ghost." He began to draw on the map with a thick red marker, creating a grid. He was a master strategist, dividing the vast desert into manageable sectors. From Barstow, he drew 3 concentric circles: 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles. He knows we're onto him now that his profile is gone. He'll be hunkered down, waiting for the heat to die off, a cheap motel, a secluded cabin, an abandoned property. The chapter president stepped forward. "Oakland, you take the northwest quadrant. Search every road, every gas station, every rundown motel from here to Bakersfield. San Bernardino, you take the east. Route 66 all the way to the Arizona border. Nomads, you have the south, down to 29 Palms. My chapter, we take the central sectors." He assigned each group a specific territory. There was no argument. The orders were absolute. "Your eyes are not your own tonight," Preacher declared. "They belong to Leo. You are looking for a 7-year-old girl with sunshine hair and a missing front tooth. You are looking for a sky blue Toyota Camry with a dented door and a broken family on its window. Every bartender, every gas station attendant, every trucker you know, they work for us now. Put the word out. There's a $5,000 reward for the information that finds her." The money had been collected in minutes, 50s and 100s tossed into a helmet. Goliath watched as the men broke off, their movements disciplined and efficient. They were no longer a gang, they were a search and rescue team. A highly organized, heavily armed, deeply motivated rescue team. He found a quiet corner and called a man he knew, an ex-Army medic who went by Doc. "Doc, it's me, the girl, Lily. When we find her, I'm already prepped." Doc's calm voice came back. "I've got a full pediatric trauma kit, blankets, water, juice boxes, a teddy bear. I'm riding with Preacher's convoy. We'll be ready." Goliath hung up. He looked over at Leo, who had fallen asleep in the cab of an old pickup truck, curled up on the bench seat. A brother named Tiny, a man almost as big as Goliath, was standing guard, a silent sentinel. The wishing rock was still clutched tightly in the boy's hand. While the army of angels spread out across the desert, a different scene was unfolding 178 miles to the north. In a small, grimy room at the end of a long, dark hallway, the room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and damp carpet. This was room 11B of the Sleepy Hollow Inn, a place where people came to disappear. Lily Anderson sat on the edge of a bed with a lumpy mattress and a faded floral bedspread. She was wearing the same pink t-shirt and denim shorts she'd had on 3 days ago. They were smudged with dirt. She was not crying. The time for tears had passed. Now, there was just a cold, hollow fear. She held a small gray stone in her hand, her thumb rubbing its smooth surface over and over. Leo's rock. He had pressed it into her palm just before she got in the car. For good luck, Sissy. She had been so excited. Mr. Dave was nice. He always laughed at her dad's jokes. He told her they were going for a super secret ice cream adventure. Just the two of them. She could pick any flavor she wanted. 2 scoops. He had a kind smile, but his eyes were like the eyes of her doll, glassy and empty. The adventure turned into a long, long car ride. When she asked where the ice cream shop was, he just said, "Soon. We have to get to the secret spot first." The sun went down. She fell asleep. When she woke up, they were here, in this room. There was no ice cream. The man, David Rask, was not mean to her. He didn't yell. He didn't hit her. That was the strangest part. He brought her food. Soggy cereal with warm milk, peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles. He called her sweetheart and princess. He told her they were playing a hiding game, and they had to be very, very quiet so no one would find them. He would sit in the room's only chair and watch her for hours. Just watch. Sometimes he would talk in a low, flat voice. He talked about his own family, a family he didn't have anymore. He showed her a picture from his wallet, a woman and 2 little girls. They were all smiling. "This was my family," he said, "but they left. Everyone always leaves. But you won't leave, will you, Lily? You'll stay with me." She knew this was wrong. Deep in her 7-year-old heart, she knew this was not a game. She thought about Leo. Was he scared? Was he looking for her? She clutched the rock tighter. She wished he was safe. She wished a superhero would come and rescue her. A big one, like the Hulk. David Rask was meticulously planning his next move. He was a man of routines. He'd been fired from the lumber yard not for any overt act, but for the quiet, unnerving way he'd stared at Mark Anderson's kids when they visited the office. His supervisor, a man named Henderson, had felt a primal chill. He'd fabricated a reason, poor performance, to get him out. Henderson had thought about calling the police, but what could he say? The guy stares weirdly. He did nothing. Another link in the chain of systemic failure. Rask knew the family situation. He knew the parents were drunks, negligent. He knew no one would notice Lily was gone for days. He had planned this for months. He had a new identity waiting for him in Oregon. A new life. He just needed a new daughter. He checked his laptop. He'd been monitoring local news, police scanners. Nothing. It was working. No one was looking. Then he tried to log into his old Facebook account, the one he used to watch Brenda Anderson's life unravel. Access denied. The page was gone. A cold knot of dread formed in his stomach. He tried again. Nothing. Someone had deleted it. That wasn't supposed to happen. That meant someone was looking. Someone with skills. He stood up and went to the window, peering through a crack in the grimy curtains. The motel parking lot was nearly empty. A few semi-trucks, a couple of beat-up cars. Everything seemed normal, but it wasn't. The quiet was different now. It was menacing. He had to move. Not tomorrow. Tonight. He turned back to Lily. "Time for another car ride, sweetheart," he said, his voice tight with a new, sharp urgency. "We're going to a new secret spot. Even better than this one." Lily shook her head. "I want to go home." "We can't," he snapped, his calm facade finally cracking. "You're my little girl now. Now get your shoes on, now." The fear in the room was no longer cold and hollow. It was hot and sharp. Lily shrank back on the bed, clutching her wishing rock. She wished for the Hulk. She wished for a hero. She wished with all the might her little heart possessed. The hours bled into one another. The desert night was vast and indifferent. The angels rode, a network of silent hunters. They were methodical. Every 24-hour gas station was visited. Every sleepy, one-street town was canvassed. They showed the photo of Rask, the description of the car. They were met with suspicion, fear, but also, sometimes, with help. The $5,000 reward opened doors that their leather cuts closed. Goliath rode with Preacher's group, covering the central corridor along Highway 58. Leo was now in a chase car, a beat-up Ford Crown Victoria, driven by a prospect named Angel, sleeping fitfully in the back seat. Goliath felt every mile as a personal failure. They had been searching for 6 hours. Dawn was only a few hours away. Rask could be anywhere. He could be in Arizona, Nevada, Mexico. The dread was a physical weight pressing down on him. At 3:47 a.m., Socket's voice crackled over their comms system, a private channel they used. "I got something. Traffic cam. State Route 14, just outside of Mojave. 2 days ago, 11:13 p.m. A sky blue Camry. License plate matches Rask's. I can't make out the dent, but the sticker is there. He was heading north. North. The search grid, which had been a circle, now became a cone, pointing up through the vast, empty expanse of the eastern Sierra. The chapters rerouted, a silent, coordinated shift in strategy communicated through encrypted texts. An hour later, another call. This one wasn't from an angel. It was from a trucker named Earl, a man who owed Preacher a favor from a long time ago. Earl was at a truck stop in a place called Olancha, a fly speck on the map. "Preacher? It's Earl. You still looking for that blue car?" "We are, Earl. What do you have?" "I think I saw it, about an hour ago. Parked at the Sleepy Hollow Inn, just south of town. It's a real dive. I noticed it 'cause of the dent. My kid did the same thing to my wife's car with his bicycle last year. Big old dent, passenger side rear door. I saw a guy come out. Match the picture you sent around. He went across the street to the gas station, bought a box of Fruit Loops and a little carton of apple juice. Seemed real jumpy. Preacher's voice was calm, but electric with intensity. Are you sure, Earl? As sure as I am that this coffee tastes like dirt. Room 11B. It's the last one on the end. The light's on. Preacher ended the call. He looked at Goliath. The look that passed between them was all that was needed. Preacher got on the radio. All chapters, all units, converge on the Sleepy Hollow Inn, Olancha. ETA 45 minutes. Maintain radio silence. Approach from the south, lights out. We form a perimeter. No one goes in, no one gets out. We wait for my signal. This was the moment, the culmination. The flash forward became the present. 196 engines, which had been spread out over hundreds of square miles, now turned as one. Their rumbling grew from 100 disparate heartbeats into a single unified roar of thunder. It was the sound of a promise being kept. Goliath felt the vibration in his soul. He twisted the throttle, his panhead leaping forward. He rode at the very front, the wind of physical force against his chest. Leo's words echoed in his mind, a mantra against the roar of the engine, hair like sunshine, missing her front tooth. Find her, find her, find her. They arrived like ghosts. The long line of motorcycles cut their engines and their lights a mile out, coasting the last stretch in near total silence. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under nearly 400 tires. They didn't storm the motel. They enveloped it. Men dismounted and moved with the quiet efficiency of a special forces unit, forming a silent, unbroken circle of leather and steel around the entire property. Every exit, every window, every possible escape route was covered. In less than 5 minutes, the Sleepy Hollow Inn was a cage. Goliath, Preacher, Doc, and 2 other senior members, a hulking Samoan named Mako, and a wiry, knife-thin man called Shank, formed the entry team. Doc had his pediatric kit slung over his shoulder. He checked its contents one last time. Juice box, teddy bear, sterile bandages, emergency blanket. Ready. Preacher had made one call on the way, to a CHP captain he knew from his days as a minister, a man whose runaway daughter Preacher had found 20 years ago. No questions asked. The debt was being called in. The captain was 10 minutes out, with a single, trusted deputy. No sirens. The 5 angels walked across the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. Their boots made no sound. The air was cold, the stars brilliant in the moonless desert sky. They stopped in front of room 11B. A single light burned behind the grimy drawn curtains. Goliath could feel his heart pounding against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat. He could smell the fear in the air, or maybe it was just his own. He looked at Preacher, who gave a single sharp nod. Goliath stepped up to the door. He raised his huge, scarred fist and knocked. Not a thunderous, door-splintering bang, but 3 simple, polite knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Inside, the sound was like a gunshot. David Rask froze, his hand halfway to Lily's arm. He had been about to drag her out of the room, into the car, and flee into the night. He thought it was the motel manager complaining about noise he hadn't made. He composed his face, forcing a placid, slightly annoyed expression. He opened the door. The smile died on his lips. The doorway was filled with monsters. 2 of them. One was a giant, a mountain of leather and beard, his eyes burning with a cold fire that seemed to look straight through Rask's skin and into the black pit of his soul. The other was an old man with the eyes of a prophet, radiating an authority more absolute than any judge. Rask tried to slam the door. It was a panicked, instinctual reaction. But a boot, the size of a cinder block, blocked its path. The door shuddered, the wood groaning, but it didn't close. "We're not the police," Preacher said, his voice low and calm. "The police are on their way, but we're the ones you should be afraid of." Goliath said nothing. He just stared at Rask. Then he began to speak, his voice a gravelly litany of judgment. "Your name is David Rask. You are 46 years old. You drive a 2014 sky blue Toyota Camry, license plate 7WHX438. There is a dent on the rear passenger side door and a family sticker with the father scratched off in the back window. You were fired from Northwood Lumber in 2021 for inappropriate conduct. You deleted your Facebook profile at 0800 hours yesterday. You bought Fruit Loops and apple juice at the gas station across the street 1 hour and 12 minutes ago. Her name is Lily. She is 7 years old. We are here to take her home." Each sentence was a hammer blow, dismantling Rask's world, stripping away his anonymity, his carefully constructed illusion of being a ghost. He was known. He was seen. Every secret he thought he had was laid bare on the doorstep of a grimy motel room in the middle of nowhere. His face, which had been a mask of quiet evil, crumbled. It became the face of a pathetic, cornered animal. He stumbled back, his mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. That was when Lily peeked out from behind the bed. She saw the men in the doorway. They were huge. They were terrifying. They looked like the bad guys from her daddy's movies. She shrank back. But then, the biggest one, the giant, moved. He stepped into the room, his presence sucking all the air out. He ignored Rask completely, as if he were a piece of furniture. His eyes found her, and he knelt, It was a slow, deliberate movement, a mountain folding in on itself. His knees cracked. He sank down and down and down until his head was almost level with hers. He was so big that even kneeling, he seemed to fill the room. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He just looked at her, and his eyes, which had been so full of fire, were now filled with a profound and gentle sorrow. He held out his hand, palm up. It was a huge, calloused, scarred hand, a hand that had done terrible things, but now it was just an offering, an invitation. Lily stared at his hand, then she looked down at her own, at the small, gray wishing rock she was clutching so tightly it had left an imprint in her skin. She looked back at the giant's face. She saw the scar over his eye. She saw the rough beard, but she also saw the tears welling in his eyes. He wasn't a monster. He was a superhero. He was the Hulk. He was here. Her wish had come true. She took a breath. She let go of the bedspread. She took one small, tentative step forward. Then another. She walked across the dirty carpet, right past the whimpering, defeated form of David Rask, and she placed her small hand in Goliath's enormous one. His fingers, so huge and powerful, closed around hers with impossible gentleness. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice thick and broken. "It's over now. I've got you." At that moment, the flashing red and blue lights of the CHP cruiser swept across the room, painting the walls in silent, strobing colors. It was over. The aftermath was both swift and painstakingly slow. David Rask was taken into custody without a fight. The case against him was a fortress, built brick by the meticulous, relentless work of the Hell's Angels. Socket had compiled a digital dossier that was presented to the district attorney. Every online trace, every bit of scrubbed data he had recovered, every piece of circumstantial evidence woven into an undeniable narrative. Mrs. Gable's testimony, once dismissed as unreliable, became the cornerstone of the timeline. The trucker, Earl, provided the final location. The angels who had canvassed the desert towns had collected a dozen other minor sightings, creating a perfect breadcrumb trail. Rask, facing an ironclad case and the prospect of a trial where 196 bikers might show up to watch, accepted a plea bargain. Life in prison. No possibility of parole. He would die in a cage, a forgotten monster. The media narrative was predictable. "Biker gangs, vigilante justice," the headlines screamed. They painted a picture of lawless thugs taking matters into their own hands. But the community of Barstow, and the wider world that followed the story, saw something different. They saw a system that had failed, and a group of outcasts who had succeeded. They saw a promise made to a child and kept. The Barstow Police Department, shamed by the public outcry and the irrefutable evidence of Officer Miller's negligence, launched an internal investigation. Miller was reassigned to desk duty, his career effectively over. His dismissal of a little boy's plea became a training seminar cautionary tale. The cost of indifference. Janice, the weary caseworker at DCFS, used the high-profile case to lobby for and secure emergency funding. The Lily Anderson Protocol was instituted, streamlining the process for flagging high-risk missing children cases, even without immediate police confirmation of abduction. The witnesses to failure, in their own ways, became agents of change. For Leo and Lily, life began again. They were placed into the foster care system, but they were not alone. Goliath was there. The first week, he showed up at their new foster home, a small, clean house with a yard, run by a kind woman named Maria. He didn't come on his bike. He came in a beat-up pickup truck. He brought 2 books, Where the Wild Things Are, for Leo, and Pippi Longstocking for Lily. He sat on the floor with them and read, his deep voice stumbling over some of the bigger words. He came back the next week, and the week after that. Every Saturday, at 10 a.m. sharp, Goliath would arrive. He never missed a visit. He became a constant, a fixed point in their turbulent new world. He taught Lily how to ride a bicycle, his huge hands steadying the seat as she wobbled, his voice a low rumble of encouragement. He helped Leo sound out words, his massive finger tracing the letters in a picture book. He didn't try to be their father. He was something different. He was their protector, their Goliath. Their biological parents, Mark and Brenda, lost their parental rights permanently. The shock of nearly losing their daughter and the public shame that followed finally broke through their fog of addiction. They entered a long-term treatment facility. Their journey toward healing would be long and uncertain. A quiet, private tragedy that unfolded in the shadow of their children's miraculous rescue. The 196 angels who had ridden that night did not forget. They established a trust fund for Leo and Lily, seeded with the $5,000 reward money and contributions from chapters all over the country. It was managed by Preacher, to be used for their education, their future. They never saw the children again. They didn't need to. They had answered the call. They had kept the faith. They faded back into the shadows, a silent, watchful perimeter around two children they had claimed as their own. The bond was a sacred one, forged in the desert night, a testament to their own strange and brutal code of honor. Found family, they called it. The only kind that mattered. 1 year later. The same Texaco station in Barstow. The heat is just as oppressive. The asphalt shimmering, Goliath is filling up his pan head, the chrome cool against his skin. A minivan pulls up to the adjacent pump. A mother gets out, and her young son, about Leo's age, immediately makes a break for the convenience store. "Alex, you get back here right now," the mother yells, her voice a mixture of exasperation and fear. "Do not leave my sight." Goliath watches the small, ordinary drama unfold. The mother corrals her son, her hand firmly on his shoulder. She lectures him about strangers. The boy looks chastened. It is a scene that plays out 1,000,000 times a day in 1,000,000 gas stations. It is normal, and it is a miracle. He finishes pumping his gas. $38.74. He looks at the spot on the curb where he sat with Leo. The concrete is empty, stained with old oil spots. He can almost see the ghost of a tiny boy in dinosaur pajamas, a chocolate milk mustache on his upper lip. He can almost feel the impossible weight of the small, smooth, wishing rock in his own palm. He thinks about promises, the easy ones, broken without a thought, and the hard ones, the ones that demand a piece of your soul. He thinks about the nature of family, the one you are born into, and the one you forge in fire and loyalty. He thinks about the 196 hard men who rode through the night, not for glory, not for money, but for a little girl with sunshine hair. They did it because a 5-year-old boy, stripped of everything, still had the courage to hope. Because he was brave enough to walk up to the scariest-looking person he could find and ask for help. And because that man, a man who the world had written off as a monster, was brave enough to listen. You see it every day. You are in this gas station. You are in this grocery store. You see the child who is a little too quiet, a little too dirty, with a sadness in their eyes that a child should not know. You see the parent who is a little too loud, a little too angry, or a little too checked out. And you have a choice. The system is designed to wait. It waits for undeniable proof, for bureaucratic permission, for a tragedy to become official. It is a slow, grinding machine that often arrives only in time to document the damage. But we are not the system. We are the hands and feet. We are the first responders in the life of a child. When a small voice cuts through the noise of your day, what do? Do you turn away, assuring yourself that someone else will handle it? Do you conclude, like Officer Miller, that there is no immediate danger? Or do you stop? Do you kneel? Do you choose to believe, even when it's easier not to? Goliath swings his leg over his bike. The leather of the seat creaks. He kicks the starter, and the engine roars to life, a familiar, comforting thunder. He is just one man, a broken man in many ways, but for two children, he was the only hero they had. He was the answer to a wish made on a simple gray rock. You don't need a leather cut or a roaring engine to be a protector. You just need to see. You just need to listen. You just need to be willing to be the one who does not look away. The world is full of lost lambs and sleeping shepherds. The question is, what kind of wolf are you? Goliath twists the throttle, and the bike surges forward, leaving the gas station behind. He has a visit to make. It's Saturday. He can't be late. He made a promise.